so I'd like to get started. Okay, we're going to call the Committee of the Whole to order. And first, let me start by recognizing everyone who's here. In the room, we have Councillor Ryan from Ward 8, Councillor Wright from Ward 3, Councillor Downs from Ward 5, President Albright from Ward 2, Councillor Bowman from Ward 6, Councillor Humphrey from Ward 5, Councillor Leary from Ward 1. And on the screen, just going to give 1 sec for our clerk to admit everybody, and then if you could just show me the panelists list, Madam Clerk. Thank you. We have Vice President Lipoff from Ward 8, Councillor Noel from Ward 6, Councillor Kelly from Ward 3, Councillor Lucas from Ward 2, Councillor Malachy from Ward 3, and Councillor Danberg from Ward 6. So we're going to start by taking up the water, sewer, and stormwater rates, and then we're going to go to the CIP. So with respect to the water, sewer, and stormwater rates, those we do take a vote on tonight. With respect to the CIP, we get information and the opportunity to ask questions tonight and have a hearing on it, but councilors are not going to vote on the CIP tonight. We'll formally vote on that later on in the budget process. And we are going to be having public hearings on both items, so the CIP, as I mentioned, but also on the water, sewer, and stormwater rates tonight. So the first item is 1-23 subparens 2, the proposed water, sewer, and stormwater rates. The rates are written on your agenda. I will just note that we need to just update due to Scribner's error. It's not fiscal year 23 rates, they're fiscal year 24 rates, and when the time comes, I'll ask for a motion to amend to clarify that. So at this point, I would like to turn this item over to our CFO, Maureen Lemieux, who is accompanied by Commissioner McGonigal to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we'll have the commissioner start, if we may.
Absolutely. Welcome, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, City Council. I believe Cassidy was going to have the presentation put up. Cassidy?
I also just want to note, I see we've been joined online by Councillor Kalis. Is there anyone else? Oh, and Councillor Oliver as well. Councillor Greenberg, I think I also haven't recognized, and Councillor Krinsman. If there are any other councillors who joined after I recognized everybody, just give a wave and I will do so. Okay, I don't see anybody. Go ahead, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. As I said, tonight is the water, sewer, stormwater rates presentation for FY24. I will kick it off, followed by our Chief Financial Officer, Maureen Lemieux. The photo you're actually seeing here is an actual photo from the 1890s. This is the central core of our Wobbin Hill Reservoir that we did quite a bit of work through over the winter, and that will be back online within the next month here. Next slide, please, Cassidy. Investing in our future. So we'll discuss briefly the water system, the sewer system, and the stormwater system. And then, as I said, Maureen Lemieux will present the proposed rates for fiscal year 24. Next slide, please. Our ongoing plan to investigate, replace, repair, clean, and line the water system. This is year 12 of this program since it has started in fiscal year 24. We will have our water meter system replacement program, which is beginning right now. Actually, it will be in full swing in the upcoming year, and some completion of some major water infrastructure projects. As far as the water meters go, there will be close to 30,000 water meters being replaced, including residential, commercial, along with the implementation of a customer portal for residents and businesses to monitor their water usage in real time and receive alerts. That is a new system that we haven't had previously, and we're looking forward to having that in place with this new system also. As I mentioned, the Wobbin Hill Reservoir work that was ongoing will be completed. And also phase 1 of the MWRA and city major water main installations, which many of you are aware of on Ward and Waverly, from Manett Road to Waverly Avenue on Ward. That's the first phase. That will all be completed by the end of June. We will be paving Waverly and that portion of Ward, and then phase 2 of the Ward Street work will be bid and will begin in FY24 also. That portion of Ward Street is Waverly to Center that will be doing that phase 2 water mains in there also. Next slide. Just a list of some of our upcoming water main work. All of this work is posted online also in the DPW utilities. If you would like to see if any upcoming work, will be replacing just under 10,000 feet of water main as part of this year's CIP. And again, that's year 12 of the water main projects. Next slide, please. We'll continue our ongoing, this is phase 11, our plan to investigate, repair, seal, and reline our sewer collection system. We're just finishing up in FY23 areas of Newton Upper Falls, the Highlands, Chestnut Hill, and Thompsonville. And upcoming for FY24, construction will start in additional areas in Upper Falls, the Highlands, and Thompsonville also. And we'll be designing work for area 9, which is Wobbin, other portions of Upper Falls, and Oak Hill. And also pump station upgrades, which funding was just recently approved. This is part of our CIP going forward also. And 11 of our pump stations. The first phase will be replacement of gate valves at 2 pump stations and the full replacement of the Oldham Road pump station. Next slide, please. Stormwater projects. We will continue to focus on our citywide compliance with the NIPD's MS4 permit and begin implementation of phase 1 of the citywide phosphorus control plan. The first phase of the NIPD's required control plan will be complete on June 30th as required by EPA. Once complete, that will help guide us in incorporating best management practices and reducing our phosphorus into the Charles River. This will also help us in choosing projects that provide the greatest reduction in phosphorus load also. We will complete the design of the Bullows Pond Dam Rehabilitation Project and begin process to obtain permits through construction. That will all be coming up. We'll be coming back to you also on that with design and approval for funding with that. And we continue to work with the planning department to update the city's floodplain ordinance as part of upcoming FEMA requirements. Next slide, please, Cassidy. And Maureen will now introduce our proposed rates, and happy to take any questions following that also. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and good evening, councilors. Cassidy, could you please move it to the next? Thank you. And so for the rates, as you all know, as a council for many years now, we put together a plan that has all this tremendous work happening. And what we did was make sure years ago that this plan did not require us to raise our rates by more than 3.9% per year. You may also recall that during the pandemic, we actually, I think it was our fiscal 22 budget, that we chose to hold the rates flat because we knew that, people certainly had financial challenges or hardship. However, the work doesn't end. The work is critically necessary for the city. And so this year we are back with our 3.9% total increase. Water, sewer, and stormwater are a $62 million program if you look at all three funds combined. So when we talk about this 3.9%, it doesn't necessarily mean that all three funds, that the rates in all three funds increase by the 3.9. Based on what's happening in each account, those rate increases vary. This year in particular, we have different rate increases. And so for the water fund, we only had a small increase in our MWRA assessment in water. However, we have taken on now the debt service, in particular for the water meter program. So in the water fund, it's the debt service that was driving the increase there. And we needed 3% increase in our rates to make sure that we could, make our numbers and continue all the fabulous work that we are doing. As far as sewer was concerned, we ended up having a significant increase in our MWRA assessment in sewer. We had been really enjoying a period of small increases from MWRA because we were really, as an MWRA community, we were perhaps the most aggressive one through most of the last decade in dealing with our I&I. At this point in time, other communities are catching up to us, not that they've done in totality the amount of work that we have, but they are decreasing their flow to a point where we're not really seeing our huge benefit cost-wise for the sewer work that we have been doing. And so the driver for the increase in sewer was really our MWRA assessment. And so the average increase for the sewer rates is 3.75%. Our stormwater, you all know all the tremendous amount of work that we need to do in stormwater. That is our smallest account. It only generates a little over $4 million a year. And so we have put through a 10% increase in our stormwater. All in all, this ends up being a 3.9% increase in the amount of revenue that we will raise, 3% in water, which is a $26 million total program, 3.75% in sewer, which is a $33 million program, and 10% in stormwater. The issue is that's only a $4 million program. So the percentage sounds large, the actual dollars are small. And with that, Madam Chair, I too will be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have when it comes to the rates.
Thank you. I want to recognize that we've been joined by Councillor Gentile. Madam Clerk, do we have any new participants online? And Councillor Crossley has joined us online. So at this point, we are going to take, and Councillor Oliver as well. I think I recognized him earlier. At this point, we are going to take questions either for the Commissioner or the CFO. I see President Albright and Councillor Gentile. Go ahead, President Albright, you're first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably this is for Ms. Lemieux. Like the water, you said the water, we raised $26 million. Is that what you said? $26 million. Is that how much these rates will raise?
Yes.
And so what percent of that goes to paying the MWRA and what percent goes to our own work?
So the MWRA is will be 14.4 million this year. I don't have a calculator handy, but my guess is that's probably almost 60% of the total.
Yeah.
That's a guess, but 14 of the 26 goes to MWRA.
So the 12 million obviously goes to our work. Does any of that go to I thought we were going to be creating a reserve fund. Do we do that?
We have a reserve fund. At this point, we are not specifically budgeting money into either the water or the sewer reserves. We are for stormwater. So the stormwater rates, as we're getting all of our plans ready to move forward, stormwater, we actually have an appropriation for reserves where we will raise more money in stormwater than we will spend this year. Water and sewer, we are no longer technically increasing the reserve funds. However, we try to be conservative with our revenue projections. And so any excess revenues or unexpended appropriations in either one of those funds drop to our reserve.
And how much do we have in the reserve?
I should know that, but give me a minute and I will look that up for you.
Okay. I was just, I've had so many constituents get in touch with me over these huge water bills that they get because they haven't been taking pictures of their meter. The last one was, they had paid $6,000 over the last 2 years and they had a $7,000 bill. So I just was wondering if there's any way to give anybody any relief, but if there isn't, there isn't. So that's why I was curious about how much we have in reserves.
So the first, as I'm looking this up, Counselor, as far as giving anyone relief, what we are doing, we can't not charge people for the water that they have used. Everybody else has had to pay it. Hold on one second. First, I will tell you as I'm saying this. So the water, we have 13 million in water reserves and 15 million in sewer reserves. Those funds we're actually drawing down so that we are able to bond less in both of those areas. And so we want to keep 2 or 3 months worth of revenue in reserve, just in case we have a year where there's not necessarily flooding, but a lot of rains and where we sell less water than we typically would. Last year was a drought. We ended up selling much more water than we do in different years. So when we calculate all of this, we actually err on the side of being conservative with the consumption. As far as people with the large bills, from having all the estimated reads, we are going to this time around, and the commissioner can certainly chime in with me, as we are changing out the meters for everyone in the city. Someone doesn't have to call and ask us this time around. If someone has a bill that's really a catch-up bill, we are going to look at those bills individually and go through and smooth them all back. And so if they've had estimated reads for 2 or 3 years, the first amount of HCFs we will charge at the rate that we were charging 2 or 3 years ago, and we will increase. So we will not be billing people at our current rates. We will be billing them for however many years they were receiving estimated bills. This actually does have a dramatic impact on the amount of bills. Last time around, if people contacted us or they were upset about their bill, we had people who were going back and trying to smooth the rates. This time we plan on doing it for everybody. So we hope that that will be helpful for people. It's always, it's certainly difficult when you're the city, the administration looking at this, because you hate to pass along those high bills. We've tried to color code the envelopes. We've had, big notices on there that it's an estimated read, really begging people to go down and send us their actuals so that they won't land in a position where they have a huge catch-up bill. But we can't forgive the use of the water as much as there are certainly instances where we would want to. I also will say here, and we want to encourage people, anyone who qualifies for our deferred tax payment program is automatically qualifies for a 30% discount in water and sewer. And I believe anyone can still go into and this is where I need Jim to help me, Commissioner. I believe people who are above the age of 65 don't necessarily have to be deferring their property taxes to potentially qualify for the water, sewer, stormwater, senior, elder, let me see, how do I want to pay, older resident discount.
So one last question. So just to make sure I understand the system. So we try to keep 13 million in reserve in water and 15 million in reserve in sewer. And then the money that we raise goes to paying the MWRA or the work we're going to do that year. Is that
Could go to not MWRA. MWRA is always part of the budget. The work that we are going to do this year. And so if we're keeping, as I said, you know, we want, right now they're a little high. That's because we're using some of those reserves for, in particular, the water meter replacement program. As you recall, when you all approved that program, we expect to spend about $18 million doing that program. We did not want to bond the whole thing, so we have the reserve set aside for a large portion of that program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to recognize we've also been joined in the room by Councillor Baker. Next, we have Councillor Gentile, then Councillor Crossley on the screen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Councillor Albright raises an important point about reserves. I don't think that we try to keep them to a certain number, necessarily 13 million and 15 million. We try to keep them, and I think it's in our guidelines, to 2 to 3 months. And I believe, I haven't done the math, but I think 13 and 15 represent more than 2 or 3 months, correct?
They do. You are correct.
Probably closer to 5 or 6 months. So once again, another area that we're very healthy, and I always like to point that out. That's the good news. Maureen, I think I heard you say that we're staying to the 3.9% cap.
Correct.
I'm very pleased to hear that. You've done that repeatedly, and I think it's really, really important with, you know, all the other increases that people are faced with, that we keep it to that. But I just had, again, another math question. Can someone just put back the rates that were up there before?
Ms. Flynn's working on it.
All right, the reason I'm looking for the rates is I looked at them quickly and I didn't see any of the rates that were increasing 3.9%. Everything was like 2 something to maybe mid 3s. And so I was curious, see what I'm saying? On the right-hand side, you've got 297 down to 303, and then you've got 3.77 to 3.76. So I'm just, you know what I'm saying? I don't see where we're...
Absolutely. So, Councillor Gentile, I'm not sure if you missed my opening remarks, but I'm more than happy to reiterate so that everybody does get this. Our water, sewer, and stormwater combined total is about $62 million. And so 3.9% of that gives us about a $2.4 million increase in the total of the 3 funds combined. The water, and excuse my dog who is barking in the background too. The water fund is a $26 million total fund. The sewer fund is a $33 million fund, and the stormwater is a $4 million fund. Excuse me for just, I apologize. I apologize for that. It's always a challenge. So the water really needed to increase because of the debt service. Sewer needed to increase because of our MWRA assessment, and stormwater, of course, we know it's a tiny fund, and we have loads of work that we need to do. So within that 2.4 million, I make sure that we don't go over that. Water increased by 3%, sewer increased by 3.75 and stormwater increased by 10%. All of them together end up yielding a total 3.9% increase.
Okay, so so that explains it, I guess. So the fact that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 categories, not one of them touches 3.9. So it looked to me like we were charging less than 3.9, which is even better news. But you're saying when you add in stormwater, it comes up to the 3.9%.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Crossley, then Counselor Leary.
Thank you. Well, I'm really glad to see that we're moving more money over to stormwater. I think the challenge before us there is enormous, and it will take a very long time to get there. On the sewer, I'm really so pleased about how the sewer and water rehabilitation program is going. I believe we're finishing the ninth fiscal year of our water sewer program from the original strategic plan that we had. And it was going to be an 11-year program. Costs have increased dramatically and more than we expected in the last few years. So I'm guessing we're going to go around 12 years. But I also see, and I'm glad to see it, that we are refurbishing our pump stations. We're going beyond the water main program, which was what the strategic plan was all about. It was just all about the water mains. Do you have any comments about that, or perhaps Commissioner McGonigal, in terms of where we are right now, and is 12 years reasonable before we have the lion's share of the work done in our sewer system? We'll always have work, but you know, the lion's share, the major rehabilitation that we planned in 2012.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. And you are correct. We've seen significant cost increases. The other increase in the sewer repairs, we're seeing more excavations needed as the system ages, much more expensive than just the relining. Our last area, I believe we had 75 excavations, so almost 3 times what we were seeing earlier. We'll probably continue to see that as we move along, get into the age system, deteriorated pipe. The relining is much more efficient and inexpensive, less impactful, but we have to make, what we go through it, as you're well aware, is we investigate it first. So we clean and camera all these. So that's how we plan and design these projects. So what we have, as I said, we've been seeing more deteriorated pipe that can't be relined, that we have to excavate and repair.
So
Counselor Crossley, Jonathan, in the CIP from the fall, we do it. There is a sewer section which does lay out the map and also the Gantt chart of the individual projects. And, you know, some of them are now, the last one is really out to 2028, 2029. So, you know, as the commissioner mentioned, these have become more complex, more costly, and this has extended out a number of years, but is, you know, continues to be a successful program.
Oh yeah, I do remember that from the fall. You know, I'm a nerd for those maps and things, but I thought we were also adding work beyond what we had not really anticipated, but just beyond where we had planned for. For example, rebuilding a pump station. That's gigantic. So
the pump station work is really a whole separate other project, very, very important, that was needed. And so that's sort of its own program.
The other comment / question is, although we have healthy reserves, which is fabulous. When I came in, they were 0. And the 13 million, I think, in water, we're going to be taking a good chunk out of that in order to pay for the transponders and meters, correct? So what, can you remind me what that amount is?
So we have already taken, I think about 6 million out of sewer to draw sewer down. We haven't taken much out of water yet, but we will be. So we've set aside the funding for about half of that program, the water meter program. And so we still have to finalize which reserves we're taking from and which pieces we're going to bond. And then, as you mentioned, we also have the pump station project, which is a very large project with really a big upfront cost. The first phase of the pump station project, I think, is going to cost us about $4 million. So as I say, we have, a bunch of different things that we're trying to do. And so I'm trying to balance. Councilor Gentile was correct. Having between 2 to 3 months worth of funds in reserve is what we shoot for. And then we try to defray, the operating costs by paying with the reserves for what we can.
So I guess I just wanted to point this out, and I'm glad you mentioned the pump station is not part of the rehabilitation of the mains program. It's a separate thing. So I think you just said you took 6 million already out of sewer. You're going to take another 6 million out somewhere from either water or sewer for the remainder of the transponder meter program.
So, well, once we finish this year, I haven't made those final decisions yet. When we bond again in January, we will have looked at everything. We know that fiscal 23 last summer was a drought year. And so we had healthy water sales. We will go through this summer and see what's happening with the account. It's, I watch it all the time, so that if we have a wet summer this summer, I may take less out of reserves in January than I otherwise will if we have a drought for the summer.
We're lucky to have you watching it all the time.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for all that. So I think it's wonderful that we have these healthy reserves, given the amount of work we have ahead of us and the unfortunate failure of the transponders, because it's probably going to be a lot of years if we ever get that money back through litigation. And then finally, I was really glad that President Albright asked right away about the situation that our residents are facing, having had so many years of estimated reads. Could you please, it would be very helpful to me, and imagine to others, if you could write a very short memo about what you mean by smoothing out the rates, what does that mean for a constituent, and who is eligible for the 30% relief on water sewer bills, under what circumstances. That would be very helpful to me. And I think for many of us, we can let our constituents know what the city is planning to do.
We'll be happy to do that, Councilor.
Thank you. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilor Leary, then Councilor Danberg. Then I'm hopeful we can go to the public hearing. I just want to remind everybody it's 7:35 and we still have the CIP to get through. So Councilor Leary, then Danberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share Councilor Crossley's praise of the work that gets done in our water, sewer, stormwater. My question specifically is around stormwater. For Ms. Lemieux, we know the tremendous work ahead of us with the NIPDES program and the phosphorus removal, and that's going to be very, very expensive. And so I wanted to sort of think ahead about the future years, about how are we thinking about the money to pay for that? Are there federal grants that are also available? What kind of financial resources do we have? Because I am concerned about otherwise the necessity for our stormwater rates to go up significantly, similarly to what's happening with our trash rates. These finally we're catching up with environmental issues, and that we've haven't been paying attention to for some decades. and it's going to be expensive to fix. So the phosphorus removal in particular is very expensive. Do we have a plan, say for the, the next 5 years, how we're going to be able to pay for that and minimize the increase to our ratepayers?
So, Counselor, I don't know if the commissioner can answer whether or not we have people who are going after different grants in this area. I believe we have applied for different grants, but I'm not the expert on that. What I can tell you is that we certainly are looking at all these different projects that we have, trying to determine which ones we can bond, which ones we won't bond. In the stormwater area, I can tell you that dredging the City Hall ponds, which is a project that cost us about $400,000 the last time we did it, which was a decade ago, when we went out to bid a few months ago on this, and I think the bids came back at about $2.5 million. We did not follow through on that. We canceled those bids, and we're going to rebid it and hopefully get better prices. But something like dredging the ponds is not really a bondable project. So, and this is why I say that, our reserves are so critical, because we really ought to be paying cash for that project, whatever the dollar amount is. So I don't know if the commissioner can jump in and answer whether or not I know we have a new environmental engineer, Maria Rose, who had been with us for years, left the city a few months ago.
Right.
So I don't quite know how we're doing with grants.
Sure, thanks, Maureen. Yes, we will continue to apply for grants. One critical component of that is having our phosphorus control plan completed. And again, that is due on June 30th of this year. We will have that completed, and that gives us a roadmap moving forward, that we can identify specific projects and what needs to be installed there. And that opens the door for more grant opportunities. So as soon as we have that in place, we will be pursuing as many grants as possible.
I think also this summer, after we get that plan in hand, we're going to be able to take a bigger look at the next number of years of spending. What might be needed then for stormwater improvements across the system. So we know it's going to increase, but once we have this plan in hand, we'll be able to take a better look for this coming year.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, Madam Chair, if I can just jump in and add one more point. This will probably not be the only time that you will see a significant percentage increase in stormwater. That will be our strategy over the next few years, because it's such a small fund. We need to really be boosting that revenue stream. But we will stay within our 3.9% in total.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to finding more about about the future plans for stormwater in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danberg. And then if we don't have any other hands, I'll open up the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, I want to add my my praise to the DPW for the marvelous work, and to our financing team for the marvelous work that you've all been able to do together to get us to where we are now, as opposed to where we were 10 years ago. If we are now in year 9 of 11 or 12 in relining the mains, it would be interesting to find out what approximately, and this would be for Mr. McGonigal, for Commissioner McGonigal, can you tell us about how much we have reduced the loss through leakage by relining the mains? Where are we now in year 9, and where do you expect us to be once the mains are done?
Yes, we are going into design for phase 9. And I don't have those numbers with me, Council. I'll be happy to provide those. We have all the numbers for the reduction in the I&I that spells out the gallons that we have reduced going into the sewer system. So I have all that. I don't have it offhand. I don't want to give you the wrong numbers.
That's fine. I'd like for all of us to have those numbers because I think it would be very helpful for us to understand how that program and the money that we've spent, that the taxpayers have spent, have helped the city. I am remembering a 10-year-old number in my head, and it seems to me that we were leaking, I'm going to say 40%. It was a big number, whatever that number was. And if we can reduce it, I know that these are mains and not all the little streets, but if we can get that number down significantly, it would be good for the public to understand the good that their taxpayers' money has done. And are we replacing every time we redo a new street and take all the surface off and redo it? Are we in fact replacing the water, sewer, and stormwater in those streets?
So we do try, anytime we do major road work, we do coordinate that with our water, sewer, and also the gas work. Eversource work is minimal, but we do coordinate. We share our 5-year paving plan with all the utilities also and try to coordinate those.
Yes. Good. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lemieux, and then we'll go to public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for everyone's information, I just want to let you know back when I started here in the city in 2010, we had well over 60% of what we sent to Deer Island to be processed was water that we had not purchased. So well over 2/3 of what we sent back to Deer Island was because of infiltration, basically. I think we're down in the low 40s. I'm not sure of that number. And that's, certainly what Jim can get for you, but I know we were well into the 60s when I first started.
Madam Chair, I happen to know it was 63%.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lemieux and Councillor Crossley, for supplying those numbers. I know you were both closer to those numbers than I was. I said 40%. I was off by 20%.
I'm sure the commissioner can give us the information for the report. So
I would really like to know where we are now and where we would hope to be when we're done.
Excellent. We'll make sure to follow up with the commissioner on that. Anybody who's spoken and doesn't want to speak again, if you could just please lower your virtual hand. At this time, could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor of opening the hearing, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the public hearing is open. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Do we have any in the attendees, Madam Clerk? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion to close the, Councilor Gentile? To close the public hearing? Oh, okay, can I close the public hearing first? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing by President Albright. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that was unanimous, and I declare the public hearing closed. Councilor Gentile.
So at this time, I was going to move the approval of the water, sewer, and stormwater rates as proposed.
Thank you. Can I also just ask if you would be willing to make a motion to amend the Scribner's error on our docket sheet? It's written to say fiscal year 23, and we need an amendment to correct it to fiscal year 24.
As amended by the chair, yes.
Okay, can I amend that myself? Or do we have, let's take, just in case, any discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor of amending, as I've described, to fiscal year 24, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's amended, and Councilor Gentile has moved approval as amended. Any discussion on Councilor Gentile's motion and these rates as proposed? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that is approved unanimously. I am going to go on to our next item. Oh, and Ms. Flynn, I know you had mentioned, do we need to take a roll call vote technically? You tell me if we have to. If we don't have to, I'd like to move on. Okay. So we're going to go on to the next two items, docket item 1-23 and 1-23 subparens 4. These are the capital improvement plan and the supplemental capital improvement plan. As a reminder, we are not voting on the CIP tonight. We do have an opportunity for counselors to ask questions. If there's any additional information you want on any of the items, this would be a great time to request that information so the administration has time to get it for you before we get further along in the budget process. And we are going to be having a public hearing. So I'm going to turn this over to our COO, Mr. Yo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, very much. And as you said, if you have further questions, we can try to answer those tonight or get you answers in the coming days. I'm going to share screen here. Oops, needs to be enabled. Cassidy, if you could help me here. Thank you.
Should be all set.
All righty. All right, I assume you can see my screen here. Tonight, we're going to discuss the supplemental capital improvement plan that hopefully most of you received at least the hard copy. We can also talk about the larger CIP document, which was presented in October. All right. The capital improvement plan really began last in October, and this supplemental CIP is the 6-month update to this. It includes any kind of new projects or project deletions and additions, changes to funding, schedules, and priorities. The projects use a wide range of funding. Most are funded by the city in some way or another. Some are involving grant funding or state funding. And they come from various different city types of accounts, everywhere from our operating budget to free cash, the CPC, grants, ARPA, water, sewer, stormwater funds, and others. This supplemental CIP includes 207 projects, and really it's the level of work envisioned in this plan is substantial. There were no new projects this year added between the CIP and the supplemental. In the past several years, we have added projects as important things have come up. This year, that did not happen. We have 8 projects that were removed. They were either completed or they were merged with others. So an example is the Newton Free Library parking lot expansion and drainage work that was completed. Forest Man Playground completed. Some of the water pipeline work is done. NECP is done. So a number of projects were removed. And a number of projects were completed at this earlier portions of FY23. The Newton Free Library's children's room expansion. I hope most of you or all of you have been over there by now to see it in action. It's quite incredible. That was occupied in August of 22. Newton Early Childhood Program on Watertown Street, NECP, was opened in January of this year. Very successful project, on time and on budget. And the Newton Free Library parking lot, the expansion, repaving, drainage, and landscaping work was completed and opened in the fall. We have a number of projects. I'll just quickly mention some of the bigger projects that are currently in progress. Newton Center for Active Living, NewCal in Newtonville should be under construction starting this fall, with occupancy expected later in the fall of 24. The Lincoln Elliott Elementary School and the community auditorium are in final stages of design. Construction should begin this coming fall with expected occupancy in September of 2025. These are some of the latest images of the last few weeks. Another project in process is the Newton South synthetic turf fields and track replacement. This project is going to be completed this summer. Livingston Cove improvements at Crystal Lake are under construction as we speak. Began last fall and expected to be completed later this summer. So this is a very exciting project with a very great design and construction company on site. Countryside Elementary School, thanks to the override, this project is moving forward. The top is the existing, the bottom is a future plan, and occupancy in September 2027. Franklin Elementary School, again, thanks to the override, is in earlier stages of design. We're beginning to work with teachers and design firm to look at what can be done on that site. So that occupancy will be either September of 27 or 29, depending on Countryside and what schools have to go to the old Lincoln Elliott School during that time period. The Gaff Pool project actually is coming. The PF approved last week. Construction starting this summer with occupancy hopefully by next summer. Very exciting project. The athletic fields renovations, phase 1 will be coming. CPC is approved, I think is coming your way shortly. Phase construction starts later this fall. Here you have images of the 3 different fields, the Albemarle fields, the northern half, the McGrath Park fields, and the Burr School fields. This is, again, very exciting progress that we're going to be making on athletic fields. The Horace Mann Elementary School project, addition and renovation with occupancy possibly in September of 26. And there's a range of projects that are going on in different categories. This slide just lists a number of things that are underway with work in FY24. I have highlighted with red asterisks which projects need upcoming council action. So, for example, the Franklin School design work needs some funding approval. The new voting equipment for the clerk's office needs council approval. So I will get this presentation to you all, and you'll be seeing a number of these items coming forward through the council process. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions, comments from counselors at this time? Counselor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Yo, thank you for the presentation. That was quite helpful. Just a couple of questions. I understand that we are using some of the ARPA funds for the police station renovation. And if it's $500,000, just wondering where we are on the feasibility study. Is that ongoing? Is that something that's going to happen next year? Or you could just speak to that a little, please.
Great question. Yes, it is just underway. We are currently working with the chief's office. His team and Public Buildings is leading this project with a design team from Kestrel Booth Architects that do work on a wide range of things, including public safety facilities. And so they're beginning to evaluate the existing conditions on the police complex. So that includes the main building, the headquarters, as well as the garage and the annex over on Chestnut Street. So it's a complex, and there are some major needs for improvements for working conditions and for space. So they're beginning a facility needs assessment. And then, the next thing to think about is a phased game plan for making improvements at that facility or in those 3 buildings. We anticipate engaging the council and the design review committee and the community starting this summer. And we're very far away from making any decisions. So at this point, we're just using the ARPA funds to begin this process. And before we're going to need, potentially money to make improvements to any of these 3 buildings.
Okay, thank
we
you.
are.
Okay, thank you for the update. In your presentation that you just had for the, you showed the Franklin School, you said it's going to be, the new Franklin School will be occupied in 27 or 2029.
Right.
Just wondering why there's a 2-year gap in there.
Well, it depends on who needs swing space, and if Countryside can be built, occupied essentially. So you'd build the new Countryside on a different part of the parcel, which we are planning to do. And if that can be done without moving the kids for that 2-year time period up to the swing space, which is the existing Lincoln Elliott School, those kids will be out of there by then. And if that can be done, then we can move full speed ahead on Franklin and get that project. They could either use the swing space or that project could be done on site. You could build a building on the other part of the parcel and keep the kids there. So there's a number of moving pieces there, and depending on those things will matter then whether it's 2027 or 2029. So
okay.
And,
oh, okay. All right. Thank you. And just one more thing on the indoor swimming pool. I know last year I was very happy to see it on the CIP. It was the first year. So it was near the bottom, which I understand. You're doing a study. It was 200,000. I don't know if that study has taken place yet. But the question is related to how it's listed on the CIP. In FY23, it had a priority of 174 and a priority factor of 27.8. In this CIP, it has a priority score of 160, so it moved up in the CIP, but the priority factor went down to 22.5 from 27.8. I'm just a little confused why, one score essentially went up and the other one went down. I thought they would at least go in the same direction.
I will look at those numbers and get you an answer to that. The project has not begun yet. We're focusing right now on GAF, getting GAF finally designed and under construction. So I will get you answers to your question.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
You have Councillor Malachy, Kalis, then Bowman.
Thank you. First on the police annex specifically, I noticed there are specific projects in the future on the roof, the historic windows, which might be, I guess, CPA eligible. Is the general condition of the exterior of the building going to be encompassed in the overall police headquarters project? Because right now there's peeling paint in the sort of what you'd call the Tudor-esque beam part. And I'm not sure what's going on with the brick pointing and all of that. And it kind of looks like, we don't care about it. So at the end of the police headquarters project, is that building again going to look like we care about it?
Yes, I hope so. So we're going to include the exterior of the buildings as we look at conditions. It's not just about what's inside. The garage, we know is a potential area for some work for sure. And the annex is an important small building that has a more public presence. So we are going to care about the exterior of the buildings.
Okay, great.
I thank you
And
for that.
across the street, I realize this is sort of breaking news and too late to be reflected in the CIP, but is there envisioned any effort to acquire or acquire at least partial rights to the Rockport garage, since they are now vacating? It seems like with that transition point, that is our best opportunity to add the parking that everyone seems to agree we need in West Newton Square.
It's a great question. I don't know. I don't even know who owns that building, where Rockport is located. So the owner of that building may have other plans going forward. So I will write that down, and we'll talk with the planning department. Thank you.
Okay, and a question related to stormwater on the, so you're aware, I think, of the flooding that occurs on Border Street when basically you get 2 inches of rain in an hour. Is the problem is that constriction under the MWRA water main. I see a project in I think the next couple of years when the segment of Cheesecake Brook from 1600 Washington Street, Warren House to Watertown Street is up for work and fixing and all of that. The last solution I heard to Border Street was buying perhaps a very big pump to divert the water past the blockage. Is that something that can either occur preferably before the main project or as part of the main project?
The commissioner abandoned me here, but I recall that there was some discussion. I can't really answer it definitively, but I know there was discussion of doing something sooner rather than later, given this constriction issue. But let me get you the latest. I'll get you the latest thinking on where the department is on that. Thank you.
That'd be great to know before we have another one of those storms. And finally, not happy seeing all that artificial turf in the CIP before we've even gotten to President Albright's and others' docket item on the discussion about costs and, drawbacks and so forth. Is any commitment on artificial turf going to be deferred until the council has had a full discussion and a study from an independent third party?
Well, not for the installation of Newton South. That was
that's
approved. And so that is moving forward, and we're very happy with the materials that we've decided upon. So we're very happy with that. We're going to need to come forward to replace Newton North's aging turf as well and track. So that will be coming up. And also we're looking at the second Newton North facility at Albemarle. So we're certainly going to engage with the council and on the resolution and answer questions. So that will be coming up. I don't know when that's scheduled, but we'll be fully participating in that.
I don't know when it's scheduled either, but thank you, and I'll let others have turns.
Thank you. Councillor Kalis, then Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Yo. Really quickly, just a reminder on Spires and Dedham. The fact that we could add a light there would be very helpful.
Thank you for that reminder.
That's it.
I've done that exit. I mean that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's getting worse. So
thank you. Councillor Bowman, then Oliver.
Thank you very much. First, can you remind me what the ComAv carriageway project is? That's the 6-something million, 6 point.
That is the Auburndale project to essentially put the carriageway back together again.
So that's on our books? That's a state?
It's a state project. We have been doing design work. So CPC funding went towards that. So the city was responsible for the design work so that we could roll it into the state's larger project. If you recall, they're doing a roundabout down there at the end of Auburn Street, and they're replacing the bridge over the Charles River.
I'm very
So-
familiar with the project. 'Cause
So that everything's getting rolled together and the state's paying for it. We just need to finish design and a couple
I was
other matters.
I was surprised by the number, so I'm glad to hear that that's not on us. All right, second, police facility. So this so is it $2 million that were allocated by ARPA? This is for the police facility. You said some portion of it's being used now for a facility review. How much of that is being used for the facility review?
Well, at this point it's several $100,000, and you know that's going to take some time to use. So that's what we're doing right now. There's no construction planned within the next year. This is going to take some time to evaluate and obviously engage with the council.
Yeah, is the evaluation being inclusive of looking at additional sites for the police? I mean, this is a very constrained site. It really, the police facilities there dominate West Newton. Between the annex and the site, the use of parking, the desire to have that parking now. I'm hearing discussions about the parking needing to be fenced in and an additional training facility. So I do wonder, especially at the amount that we've just allocated here between the two buildings, you're at, you know, $14 million. That's a pretty big building, right?
Yeah,
so
it would be probably 5 times that if we were to try finding another facility. This project is about this site and getting, there's actually plenty of room to have modern professional office space and workspace. We need storage for evidence. There's a range of things that we now need to find room for. And so it can be found on the site among these 3 buildings. Might this city find a new police location decades from now? That's a possibility. But at this point, we're staying with reality right now that we're going to be using this site and making improvements to these buildings for the police who are working there now, and the public that will need to come and use facilities there and work with our department. So,
and I appreciate the need to update this. I guess I question this being more expensive. I mean, 5 times this amount would be more expensive than an elementary school. That just feels a lot. And I guess I want to make sure that we're being strategic about this and we're thinking about, you know, those 2 properties have a value in of themselves. If we thought creatively about, you know, if that's the best place for the police to be located, and those properties could be sold to fund, to go move towards something different. You know, I would like us to make sure that we're being smart about this and that we're being as thoughtful about this as we were about where we put the new senior center and all the work that we do on individual elementary schools. I'm not saying that it's not important to do, but I just want to make sure if we're spending to meet, you know, this could end up being a lot more than $13 million to do it.
we have a great design team led by Josh Morrison, our very able public buildings department, and we have a great design review committee. You all are going to have great input on this. So, you know, I think we will come up with a project that works well for this city and provides, you know, professional, modern work and space for our police department.
Yeah, so I get that, and I do support, let's just be clear, I support us moving forward with that. I also just hear a lot of people who lament over the amount of space that the police department is currently taking in West Newton, and just if that's the best use of that space. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And then if there are no other hands, we'll go to public hearing.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I read the CIP quite I go into the details here. I think, Mr. Yo.
We changed it for
knows
you.
that. Yes, and I do
Thank you.
appreciate that. And I'm just wondering, like, following up to, Councilor Lucas's question, I'm just wondering, were there changes to kind of the drivers of the priority scoring with some of the projects? I assume that would logically possibly happen, right? Like some of the different, the criteria might change a little bit, which would affect, as Councilor Lucas was pointing out, the priority score here might change because there are 11, if I recall, components to that score, right?
The criteria have not changed.
Okay.
What does change every year in the fall when we relook, the team gathers to relook at projects. There's new information, there's new perspectives you have on an individual project. Something has come up that changes your mind about, the existing conditions or the need for that project. So the scoring definitely could change from year to year, from fall to fall, and that can happen, for any project, any year. But the criteria hasn't changed. We have not changed the criteria in a number of years.
All right, great. No, I didn't mean changing the criteria, I meant the scoring. So yeah, I think what you said makes perfect sense. I appreciate that. And one thing that kind of struck me as we were going through this, and there were some questions going on, how frequently does the administration go back into the two columns that are sources of funding and projected, like the estimates? Like, is that something that is kind of a rolling procedure throughout the course of the year as things change, or is it done more kind of, ad hoc or systematically once or twice a year for CIP?
Well, it's definitely done twice a year for the CIP, but that being said, Maureen and myself and our department directors, we're always thinking about that sources of funds column in particular, and also any new information on project costs. We're factoring in. So yeah, we're thinking about those columns all the time.
Okay. And then is it fair to say that as based on what you just said, and as we all know, construction costs are kind of a little bit through the roof, no pun intended, right now.
Yeah, and unpredictable.
Good point. Are those kind of increases reflected here for the, at least the projects in the 107, I think you said it was, that, are kind of pending?
Yeah. Commissioner Morse did make a number of changes this year to be reflective of construction. The problem is if a project is lower ranked and we're not spending a huge amount of time right now thinking through something, the cost of that, the projected cost of that is a real crapshoot at this point. So, the higher the project gets, and we start thinking about how it's going to be programmed over the next 5 years, that's, you're going to start to think more carefully about the cost estimating and bring in your design teams to really give you better numbers.
Exactly. The closer to the top of the list, the sharper the pencil, so to speak. Makes total sense. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm looking at Maureen to make sure she's still shaking her head up and down. So
great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's all for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Laredo, then public hearing.
Mark, you're muted.
And I said all my good stuff just before that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to briefly follow up on Mr. Yo's response regarding the police station. I recall specifically early in Mayor Fuller's tenure that she spent a considerable amount of time looking for alternative sites for a police station in the city with the idea of potentially building a brand new one. And the fact of the matter was there wasn't any. And I know Mr. Yo recalls that, and Ms. Lemieux recalls that. A lot of time spent, and you need a certain amount of acreage, you need a fairly central location. Like it or not, you have to have police vehicles able to exit and enter, and you need a fair number of police vehicles. And you also have a lot of other constraints that make finding an alternative site, I think, extraordinarily difficult. So I, for one, am quite supportive of the idea that just like we did with our fire stations and just like we do at the senior center and just like we do with our school buildings, this is an important part of our infrastructure. And I think past studies have identified some very serious deficiencies in the current police station that we need to remedy. And we have to deal with the reality of the fact that this is a site we have. And so we need to make the best use of it possible. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands? Seeing none, is there a motion to open a public hearing on the CIP and supplemental CIP?
Move to open the public hearing.
Moved by several counselors, including Counselor Krinsman on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I declare the public hearing open. Would any members of the public wish to speak? Do we have any on the screen, Ms. Flynn? Okay, seeing
Move to close the public hearing.
all those in favor to close the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I declare the public hearing to be closed. Okay, so any other questions? And otherwise, I would like to take a motion to hold on these items. Councilor Gentile.
Motion to hold.
Okay, did we have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to hold these items, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So I believe that concludes our business for the committee of the whole, as those motions to hold were both approved. So we can adjourn the committee of the whole, correct, Madam Clerk? Okay, we're adjourned, and President Albright, back to you.
Councillor Lucas, could I invite you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you very much. This meeting is being both audio and video recorded. And let's see, the same people are still on the screen. Do I have to do the same thing we just did? Well, I guess I'll do it because that's what's required before a council meeting. I have to tell you who's remote. So we have Councillor Kalis, Lipoff, Wright. No, Wright is here. Councillor Crosley, Kelly, Danberg, Greenberg, Krinsman, Laredo, Lucas, Maliki, Noel, Norton, Oliver. All of those people are remote. The rest of us are in the room. Councillor Vice President Lipoff, would you give us the Land Use Committee report?
Yes, Madam President, there is no report and no public hearings to assign. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that hasn't happened in a very long time. Councillor Crosley for the Zoning and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The report is on page 417. Both items were held, but I would like to say that a couple of things. I know a lot of you have been attending our meetings on the zoning project, and some information that people have been requesting regarding numbers of how the numbers change if we remove parking requirements or lessen them or increase them, we're going to be getting a memo that we'll be discussing briefly at our budget meeting, which is our next regularly scheduled meeting. We will be having one more meeting in early June to discuss the particulars of the version 2. And then we did already set a public hearing for our second June meeting, which is Monday, June 26th. So just to be really clear, we're opening a public hearing. We are going to leave it open and continue in the fall. Prior to that, we have set a meeting. We've been inaccurately calling it a committee of the whole. What it is ahead of our June 20th council meeting, we will have a zoning and planning committee meeting where the entire council is invited. It's the same thing as committee of the whole, but it is to give the council a complete presentation of the proposed version 2 zoning. And so that you all will have an opportunity to ask questions and so forth ahead of that evening's full council meeting before the public hearing. Even though 2/3 of you at least have been coming to our meetings, there are some, particularly members of finance, who have rarely, if ever, been able to attend. So we want to make sure you get your shot. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Krinsman for the Programs and Services Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. There is no report tonight, but I do have one public hearing to assign.
Please go ahead.
Item 144-23. This is the citizens group petition to place a non-binding advisory question on the ballot related to some questions around zoning. And this will be scheduled for public hearing on June 8th.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Downs for Public Safety and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam President. There is no report. However, I have some late filed items for which I need a suspension of the rules. They are to appropriate funds for IT for the police and
Why don't we do them one at a
overtime.
time? We'll do them one at, is that, so the first one is, say it again?
It's for $640,000 for police IT department.
Okay. All those in favor of granting Councilor Downs a suspension of the rules for late filed item, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no? Go ahead.
And the second item is to appropriate is $250,000 for police overtime.
Okay, we need another suspension of the rules for the second item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no?
Almost
Thank you
set.
very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Leary for the Public Facilities Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The report starts on page 418. The committee actually met twice this session. First was on Thursday, May 4th. Item 156-23. This was to transfer $1.5 million to improve the city's roadways, sidewalks, and ramps. Public Facilities approved this 5-0. Item 157-23. This was to appropriate $1 million to DPW's vehicle equipment account, and Public Facilities approved that 5-0. The committee met again on Thursday, May 11th. We had 132-23, which was the 558 for the Gath Pool project at 256 Albemarle Road. And Public Facilities, we actually approved that 6-0. I see in our record it says 5-0, but there were 6 members there. 166-23, this was to appropriate funds for Phase 3 of the Gath Memorial Pool project. This was the amount of $5,834,362, and the committee approved that 6-0. So we just need to make that correction. And with that, Madam President, I move the report.
Thank you very much. Councilor Grossman for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The report begins on page 419, and the committee met on Monday, May 8th. The first item, 161-23, the acceptance of a $2,500 grant from the Mass Cultural Council, was approved 5-0. Item 162-23, acceptance of $15,830 in grant funding from the Mass Cultural Council, was approved 5-0. Item 156-23, Her Honor the Mayor requesting to transfer $1.5 million to improve the city's roadways, sidewalks, and ramps, was approved 6-0. I'd actually like to ask, Madam Clerk and Madam President, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask if 157-23 could actually be placed on second call, please.
Okay.
Item 160-23 to transfer $21,950 from an online code management program, was approved 6-0. Item 151-23, Her Honor the Mayor requesting to appropriate $55,000 for the full and final settlement of Allison Larkin against the City of Newton, was approved 6-0. And item 152-23 to appropriate $525,000 for the full and final settlement of John Doe, Jane Doe, and David Doe against the Newton Public Schools, was approved 6-0. At this time, I need to ask for a suspension of the rules to accept a few late filed items on page 427. So let me tell you about those. The first is item 190-23, Her Honor the Mayor requesting to appropriate $30,000 for an IT risk assessment. Do you want to do these one at a time?
Yes, we should. Is that the same one that was just, no, this is this different one. I think we should do them one at a time.
Okay, so that's the first one, 190-23, $30,000 is the request, and that's for an IT risk assessment.
Okay, all those in favor of that suspension of the rules, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Thank you, go ahead.
Okay, then item 191-23, the request to transfer $100,000 to snow and ice vehicle contractors.
Okay, all those in favor of that suspension of the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That's done, thank you.
Okay, and then item 193-23, a discussion regarding the property tax overlay surplus.
Okay, all those in favor of that suspension of the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then, so with that, I move the finance report. Would you like me to handle the committee of the whole reports?
Well, I was
now?
just consulting with our clerk, and we decided we'd do real property reuse first.
Okay, so then in that case, I should wait on the suspension of the rules for the meeting we just had as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councilor Laredo for Real Property Reuse Committee.
Well, I'll make it short and sweet, Madam President. There is no report this evening, so we can go right to Councilor Grossman.
Okay, thank you. And now Councilor Grossman for the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Madam President. The report begins on page 420. The Committee of the Whole met on Wednesday, May 3rd, and all items at that meeting were held. The Committee of the Whole met again on Wednesday, May 10th. Let's see, most items were held. This one was approved. 125-23, Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend $1.4 million from fiscal year 22 free cash for a bridge grant to the Newton Public Schools. That was approved 16-0. Item 127-23, that's on second call. So all other items were held at that meeting. And then I do need to ask for a suspension of the rules to report on the Committee of the Whole water, sewer, and stormwater rate votes and the CIP item, which we held, but for which there is no report or written report.
So Councilor Grossman is looking for suspension of the rules to give a report that is not written before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The Committee of the Whole met earlier this evening, Monday, May 15th. The first item, 1-23 subparens 2, the proposed water, sewer, and stormwater rates, was approved as amended to clarify that we're talking about fiscal year 24 rates and to the dollar amounts that are specified on the agenda. Madam Clerk, could you tell me the vote on those items?
And for the record, Madam Clerk,
A lot of papers up
I
here.
am recused from all the
23
water,
to-
sewer, stormwater rates.
Okay, and Counselor Downs recused on all of those rates. 22 in favor, none opposed, 1 recused. All other items were held, and with that, I move the reports.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think we can call the roll on the first call items.
Counselor Baker,
Aye. Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Crossley,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Gentile,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg, Counselor Greenberg, Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz, Counselor Noel,
Aye.
Counselor Norton,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
and President Albright.
Aye.
And the first call items passed 22-0 with 2 absents.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have 2 items on second call, I think. And the first one, shall we do 157-23 first? Is that okay with? Yes. So Counselor Grossman, do you want to give the report on that one?
Sure, and this was actually heard by 2 committees. This was a request by the mayor to appropriate $1 million to DPW's vehicle equipment account. We, in the Finance Committee, had a presentation from Deputy Commissioner Sullivan, who spoke about a number of vehicles that are beyond their useful life and a desire to replace those vehicles. The committee's discussion focused around the larger picture with respect to free cash. I don't think anybody in the committee expressed any reservations about the need to replace the vehicles or the merit that such a request had, but really rather the committee grappled with the broader picture of where we're at from a free cash perspective, what prioritization, you know what I'm trying to say, what priority the council is placing on various free cash items, how we might discuss it. And as a result, the vote was 2 in favor, 1 opposed, 3 abstaining.
Okay, this also went to public facilities? No, yes? Yes.
Go to public facilities, but we approved it, and we didn't have, there was really no qualms or concerns. I think the Deputy Commissioner made it clear there was a need for these new vehicles, that others were past their useful life, and it made sense for us to allocate the money for replacement.
Do you happen to have the vote there handy?
Yeah, it was first meeting, that was 5-0, right?
Okay.
So it was 5 in favor. We had 3 counselors absent that evening.
Okay. Now, who put this on second call? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam President. I put it on second call because I thought it was important to draw it to everybody's attention and not just pass it on first call without explaining what the Finance Committee's discussion was and what my own personal reservations are. Obviously, I don't have any problem with keeping up our vehicle maintenance and making sure that DPW is equipped with what they need. My bigger problem goes with other discussions we've had as a council lately, and I think that we're going to continue to have with our next item around when and if we have a say on how we're using free cash. And personally, I have a really hard time voting in favor of vehicles when I still am not satisfied with where we're at on things like kindergarten aides and middle school class size and some of the other really big priorities that we've been talking about as a council. That said, I am open to how people want to handle it. If folks want to recommit it, the Finance Committee has a tremendous number of items before us that are requests from free cash. I don't know exactly, but I think it's about 20. I know we have 24 docket items before finance, including the budget items. So if this was recommitted, it could be considered together with all of those other items. Obviously, Public Facilities approved it, and if folks want to move ahead with it, our deputy commissioner did express some concern about the ability to procure these vehicles in that they're not always available all the time, and there is some time sensitivity to being able to grab a vehicle that's available. Personally, that did not compel me. So if folks want to move ahead with it tonight, I will just vote no. If folks want to recommit it, that's fine too. I just wanted to make sure everybody.
Do you want to make a motion?
I sort of wanted to hear from people before I make a motion. I can make it just for purposes of discussion, if that's helpful.
It's really up to you. We can discuss it without your motion, or we can discuss it with your motion.
I'll say if there's a resounding desire to move ahead with it tonight and not recommit it, that's fine. And we can just vote it as is. But if there's a desire to consider it with other free cash items, then I would move to recommit at an appropriate moment.
So first Councillor Humphrey and then Councillor Leary.
Thank you, Madam President. So I was one of the two in the Finance Committee that voted in favor of this item, and my rationale was pretty straightforward, which I think is what we've already heard alluded to, which is that there is a ticking clock on this particular item in terms of procurement. These are everyday use vehicles that can no longer be used, and if we are not able to replace them or not able to move forward with purchases, we heard sometime in the next probably 2 weeks, we might miss the purchasing opportunity by a year to 2 years. And I think that we've seen in the city that deferring maintenance, deferring some of these type of things can add up pretty quickly in terms of being even more expensive in the long run. So I felt that the department did make a compelling case that they needed this pretty much right away. This was a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of the discussions we've been having around free cash and so forth. It seemed like an appropriate use of money, and this seemed like a time-sensitive thing to deal with now. So I'm encouraging us to vote in favor of it tonight so that we can move forward and not miss out in a very tight market on these purchases. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leary.
Thank you, Madam President. I think Councillor Humphrey very nicely articulated my concerns as well, so I won't repeat those. But I think that Councillor Grossman has brought up a very thoughtful point about the use of free cash versus bonding and the plight that we're in with our schools. And where I would prefer to keep this $1 million for vehicles out of that discussion and not recommit it this evening, but I would be open to listening to, you mentioned there were like 20 items regarding the use of free cash, and I would be interested in having a larger discussion on that. But I don't want to hold up DPW's vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
What I was going to inquire about, but I think this may have been answered, but if the Chair of Finance has any further information, is the time sensitivity of this item. Would lead me to support continuing moving it along, but that's what I wanted to inquire about. But I've heard something already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Downs.
Thank you. I think the main issues have been raised. I'm concerned also. I'm very sympathetic to trying to find money for the school budget, but I want to remind my colleagues who cannot get to school without the roads being paved and cleared and the sidewalks being cleared, and that's a lot of what DPW does. So if there's any kind of time issue with that, I will not be voting for this, although I'm very sympathetic to the wider discussion on free cash.
Counselor Ryan?
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with what Councilor Humphrey said about the maintenance. Having run fleets before for large companies, sometimes the maintenance is more expensive than the buying the new vehicle. In the long run, it doesn't pay off. And with our supply chain problems right now, if we don't act on some of these things now, then we're going to have a problem. But, I have myself been looking at the kindergarten aid issue and some other. I'm a big supporter of the schools, even though my kids are grown and everything else. And I just don't see how we can have kindergarten classes without aids. So the wider discussion of the free cash, it's not over. We have to go through this budget season and figure out a way to get those aids for the kindergarten and a few other things. And if it has to come out of free cash, it will. So I'm going to vote for the vehicles, but unfortunately, I'm in ZAP the same time as finance. And that's really bothersome right now because I'd like to be there, but I can't be two places at once. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crossley.
Thank you. Any of us would, if we could figure out how to be in two places at once, that would be something. I too want to see these vehicles replaced. So earlier we talked about, you know, how great it is that we've gotten this far with our water sewer program and how we're catching up with, you know, many decades, a half a century of deferred maintenance. Again, when we came in 2010, 2011, it was a number of years and really not before Jim McGonigal became the Commissioner of Public Works that we started putting in place a vehicle replacement program so that we were not spending more money maintaining vehicles that were way past their useful life than it would cost, in fact, to buy the new vehicles. I'm not sure that, well, certain vehicles, whether they can be bonded or not, because they have a pretty short lifespan, but, you know, that's maybe another issue. I'm very sympathetic to the other matter. And that we should be having maybe continual talks about how these things are best funded. But I think it would be very unwise, both for reasons of procurement and so that we don't slide backwards into a time when we were deferring our capital needs vehicles to the point where it cost us more to keep them than to buy new. So I agree with Chair Leary that in this particular case, I think I would hope we take this one out of the broader discussion that we need to have on how to spend free cash. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rado.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, I want to thank my colleague from Ward 7 for raising the issue. I think she raises some very important issues, and I fully hope and expect that finance will discuss this in more detail because it is critically important. I do, however, think we must move forward, should move forward with the purchase outlined here. I think we had a robust discussion in public facilities about it. The needs compelling. I think Councilors Humphrey and Crossley laid out in different ways why it is important to do this now. And I also, I share Councilor Crossley's concern about not falling backwards in terms of our maintenance. It's no different than deferring charter maintenance in the schools. You know, we can pay for it now, we can pay for it later. And I think we have come a long way in a lot of different areas to really getting ourselves on the right track to fund capital needs properly. And I think we need, it's critical to do so, even in what may be a difficult financial time, because if we defer it, we create much greater problems for ourselves going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Noel.
Thank you. I align myself with Counselor Grossman, and I don't want to speak for her, but I think the thing that is so frustrating about being in finance is that free cash tends to feel a little bit like a slush fund, that we get these free cash items in front of us and that, there's no true understanding of, how did we find this money? And there is a true understanding of it. The mayor has prioritized that we're going to do X instead of Y. And then when in finance we push back on it, it's always like the house is on fire. Well, if we don't get it this week, we're going to lose this opportunity. And it creates a situation in finance where we really feel like we are up against the wall, and it doesn't feel like our role as oversight is productive or that we're able to be fully informed. And the other thing I'll say, and Councilor Grossman's been doing a really good job of reminding us in finance about the situation with the schools, and deferring maintenance on a vehicle is easily measurable. It's going to cost us more in 3 years, and we know by how much, but deferring our commitment to our children is less easy to measure. We're not sure what the repercussions are going to be. We can assume some experts will say they're bad, and some folks will say the kids are going to be just fine. But it's a less compelling argument because of the lack of facts or insight into what truly is going to happen if we don't support these kids right now, coming off the heels of a 3-year pandemic. And I think I share Councilor Grossman's frustration with the position we're continually put in finance. And I think that I'm ready to say enough. And we have more items coming to us that feel like we don't have a lot of say, and our role is oversight. So I have frustration about this item.
Thank you. Counselor Grossman, did you want to speak now, or should we let others speak?
When it's my turn again, I was going to call the question after one more sentence, but I don't want to cut off others who may want to speak. I
okay.
just think it's obvious where we're going and don't want to
Okay, I
waste
have
time.
a few more people then. Counselor Danberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Councilor Grossman, for raising this question. It's a very difficult choice if we have to pit one thing against another and attempt to make a choice and a decision as to whether we should fund one or the other. I agree that we need these vehicles now. Vehicles get to a point in their lives where they cost more than purchasing a new vehicle. And so I will be supporting this. I feel that we need to go ahead and make that purchase. However, kindergarten aides are absolutely crucial in our classrooms. We need to find a way to fund both of these things. We cannot say that one is more important than the other. We need to find a way to do both. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gentile.
I just want to indicate my support for the position that the finance chair has made tonight about looking at this holistically, the question of free cash. Over a month ago, there was a letter, I think it was penned by the president and the chair of finance to the administration. I thought it was well written, and I thought it hit the nail on the head about having a discussion about, let's see the whole picture of how you plan on using free cash so we can make informed decisions. And that hasn't been completed, which is why I think it would be wise to send it back to the committee, but I'm prepared, as I think the chair is, if it doesn't go back, I guess I'll just vote against it. But at some point, you have to draw the line, and you can't just, cherry pick things if we're going to have it. It's $1 million. It's not, a small amount. I'd also point out, if you look at the item before it, it's sidewalks and things of that nature. That was $1.5 million. And that item flew through because of the source. It wasn't free cash. And I'm just wondering if there was another source that could have been used for these items if they're all that important. And that's a discussion, and I didn't think to ask it, and I had two shots, public facilities and finance. And I didn't think to ask it, but I now wish that I had. So, you know, either we're gonna get the full picture or, you know, we're not. And I personally would like to see the full picture.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Madam President. I will align myself with our Chair of Finance. This is not a, sorry about the background noise. This is not a, you know, lesser of two evils. This is not a, can we scrape a few more years together out of maintaining these vehicles? This is a matter of priority in my perspective. I do want to have a conversation about the entirety of free cash and how we collectively think it should be put to use. And again, apologize for the noise. But I do think that sending this back to committee is the appropriate move tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other hands? Councillor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to make it clear that all of the comments that my colleagues made about the importance of maintaining our vehicles and deferred maintenance and streets and sidewalks, totally get it, totally agree. I think both all three, Councillors Noel, Gentile, and Oliver summed up my feelings, and that you know, the minute we have a free cash item before us and we express any reservation, the answer back is, you know, if you don't do this, something terrible is going to happen. And I guess my feeling on it is that if this were that much of a priority or that important, we would have heard about it before May. That said, it's pretty clear to me that everybody wants to move forward, and I don't want to spend more time. So I'm not going to make a motion to recommit. If it's helpful to move the process forward to essentially call the question with the reports as is, then I'll do that.
Okay, fine. Is there any discussion about calling the question? Councillor Danberg, do you have your hand up again, or is it just left over? No, okay.
So what's the motion again, just to be clear?
Pardon?
I just didn't hear clearly the motion.
Well, it's to call the question
Oh, call
on
the
the
question,
original
okay.
item, which would be approval.
Yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
just want to be clear.
So I guess we can call the roll.
Councillor Baker,
Aye.
Councillor Bowman,
Aye.
Councillor Crossley,
Aye.
Councillor Danberg,
Aye.
Councillor Downs,
Aye.
Councillor Gentile,
No.
Councillor Greenberg,
Aye.
Councillor Grossman,
No.
Councillor Humphrey,
Aye.
Councillor Kalis,
Aye.
Councillor Kelly,
Aye.
Councillor Krinsman,
No.
Councillor Laredo,
Aye.
Councillor Leary,
Aye.
Councillor Lipoff,
Aye.
Councillor Lucas,
Aye.
Councillor Malachy,
No.
Councillor Markowitz, Councillor Noel,
No.
Councillor Norton,
Aye.
Councillor Oliver,
No.
Councillor Ryan,
Aye.
Councillor Wright,
Aye.
and President Albright.
No.
So that passes 16-7 with one absent.
Thank you very much. We have a second item on second call, and this one was from the Committee of the Whole. Councillor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam President. This is item 127-23. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend $10 million from fiscal year 22 free cash for the Lincoln Elliott Elementary School construction project. The Committee of the Whole approved this item with 5 votes in favor, none opposed, and 10 abstentions. The discussion focused around, again, largely the source of the funding here, whether $10 million of free cash as opposed to bonding is the right course of action for this particular project, and what ramifications that may have on the broader financial picture with respect to other needs for free cash, other ways we may pay for this project. And I will stop there and can answer any questions anyone has as the discussion goes on.
Do we have a vote?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it already. 5 in favor. That's okay. 5 in favor, none opposed, and 10 abstentions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gentile, did you put this on second call?
Yes, I did. I put this item on second call for the express purpose of having it recommitted to the Finance Committee. And the reason for that is I am hoping that we can have a discussion. I don't know what the outcome will be of that discussion, but I am reluctant to tie up this amount of free cash in this manner, and I think that we ought to take a look at some alternatives. Councilor Humphrey, the night of the meeting, expressed that he was surprised that there wasn't more support for Lincoln Elliott. I just want to assure him and everyone else, my colleagues and anybody that might be listening, that this is by no means meant to indicate that there isn't support for the project going forward. I haven't heard one person speak negatively about the importance of the project. But I want you to just bear with me for a minute. Please don't get hung up over a figure that I use or a term that I use. I'm just trying to give you an idea of why I think it would be beneficial if this was sent back to Finance. And I was prompted by something that the chairperson said at the meeting when she referred to possibly setting up a trust, which is something that I actually had brought up at the time of the override. So one thing that I would like us to consider is setting up a trust or a line item that would simply be a debt service reserve fund. And I would like us to talk about the potential of raising $25 million to put into this fund. The first $10 million of that would be the funds that are requested that are in front of us tonight. So that would be the first 10 million. You've heard me talk about overlay surplus in the past. Because we have not certified any surplus from that fund in close to 6 years now, it's grown to where it is just a little bit under $32 million. Now humor me and just assume that there's a surplus of approximately $10 million. I believe that it's at least that, but time will tell. But let's use that. So now you're up to $20 million. We recently heard at Finance that we are in a tremendous position with our interest income. We are 3/4 of the way through this year, and we are about $4.4 million above what was budgeted. I believe we budgeted $600,000, and we are currently at $5 million.
Councillor Gentile, could I ask you to request more time?
Yeah, I guess I better ask for 3 more minutes to sum it up.
Okay, Councillor Gentile would like 3 more minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Please go ahead.
So fortunately, we're about $4.4 million to the plus, and we're only 3/4 of the way through. The other area that we can look at, we had a little bit of a discussion about the rainy day stabilization fund. Council Humphrey again expressed the position that I sensed that he was not thrilled the way it's being currently handled. I don't agree with some of the points that he made. I do think it serves a very important purpose. But I don't think the sole purpose is to prop up our AAA bond rating. I do think that there could be something down the road, another pandemic where the government doesn't bail us out, where it could come in handy. But he did prompt me into thinking that there's some talk about raising the percentage increase from 5% to 6%. And I don't believe that that's necessary. I understand his frustration that we've got this big chunk of money and it's sitting there and it's not working for us. And I think that we would better serve, it's not a lot of money, it might be $250,000, that we would be better served not to go to 6% and to put it into this type of a reserve fund where it can work for us. And what I mean by that is the financial landscape in this country has changed. It wasn't that long ago where you were getting a 0.5 point interest on your checking and savings account. And now you see, advertisements in the paper that, easily you're getting something over 4%. Treasurer Mendez was in not too long ago. We had some questions about him moving money in the rainy day fund to T-bills. And his latest estimate is that money is going to return 5.21%. It's time for us to think about how we could use, interest income to help us with our operating budget. So if we could raise or put aside the 25 million, and there's some other sources, and you were to get 4 to 5%, that money could be used to help defray our debt service costs. And that fund could have a restriction that we're not to touch principal, and it's only to use the interest income. Or you might have the fund that says you can use a certain percentage of the principal. There's a lot of ways of doing it. But I would rather do something like that rather than throw $10 million of free cash into this project when we could keep the money and have it working for us. I'm just about done.
Yeah, you're just about out of time as well.
All right. I mean, again, it's a concept. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but I think that would be extremely important to have the discussion. 1 more minute to make the last point.
Okay, Councilor Gentile would like 1 more minute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Please go ahead.
So I've heard that there's again, I've never seen so much linkage with our budgets lately. And I heard that there was some linkage between this action and the $600,000 from the kindergarten aides. And, my whole thing is, don't link them. If it's that important to get the kindergarten aides, then give them the money. All right, we have the money. And one way you could simply do it is that we could encourage the mayor. Right now, there is, I believe the plan is to appropriate $1.5 million in this year's free cash to support the operating budget. Well, let's get together and encourage the mayor to increase that figure to $2.1 million. And there you have your $600,000 that you can give to the school department so that you have your kindergarten aides if it's that important. So those are the things that I'd like to see us talk about. And so therefore, I'm going to move that we recommit this item back to finance.
So I just need to ask you to amend your motion a little bit because it was never committed to finance in the first place. So I think what you're wanting is the council to commit this item to finance, not recommit it.
That's a very good point. I would move that we commit the item to finance.
Okay. Councilor Grossman, could you also, I know you've got your hand raised, but could you also clarify about the $600,000?
Yeah, and actually, why don't I just do that point? I see lots of other folks want to speak too. So the $600,000, that was the mayor's proposal linking the two. And I just want to correct that it's not for the kindergarten aides. At the moment, the kindergarten aides are still out of the budget entirely. They were not. So what was put back, initially, there was a greater reduction of FTEs across the system. I don't want to misspeak, but I believe the $600,000, well, what was put back with this particular $600,000, I believe was elementary teachers that took class sizes back down below, with a cap of 25 kids. Previous to that, there were some elementary class sizes that were between 25 and 30 kids. And I believe that the $600,000 that put back was tied to that, or if not the elementary, then it was some of the other FTE positions elsewhere in the middle and the high schools. The kindergarten aides are not funded. So I think we're down 17 and a half. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if it's 17 or 17 and a half FTEs that are the kindergarten aides.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the 600,000. Just quickly on the motion itself, I have no problem committing it to finance and continuing the conversation there. I obviously think it's an intriguing concept, the trust concept, or I wouldn't have raised it the other night. It's going to be a very interesting set of finance meetings and some very long ones. But I'm happy to continue the conversation there and have this come back together with the other free cash items, if that is the will of everyone, and may have more to say later. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
So I'm intrigued by Councilor Gentile's ingenious idea, but I am also curious about time sensitivity on this. Does the commitment to finance affect the ability to use these funds in a timely way that are going to be important for the city? I don't know, through you, Madam President, to the chair.
Chair Roseman.
Well, like we have the situation with free cash every year, it has to be voted out of the full council before the end of the fiscal year to be able to be put to work. If it isn't, then it drops back to our free cash for this fiscal year. And when our fiscal year closes, there's then a period of a number of months where we can't use it until it goes back through the certification process. Our comptroller needs to add it all back up again, see how much free cash was sort of generated by the previous fiscal year. That goes through a state certification process, and then it's available for appropriation again, usually mid-fall by October. So, I think the idea here would be that if this were committed to finance, together with the other approximately 20 items requesting free cash before us, we have to deal with them and vote them out by our first meeting in June in order for them to make it back to the full council for the council's last meeting in June. So that gives us, I have to look back at the calendar, but I think it's 2 finance meetings because we have a Thursday night meeting on May 23rd, and then I think we have one more in early June. Ms. Flynn, correct me if I'm wrong. So it's 2 finance meetings, or is there a third in there I'm forgetting? But the 2 in June, I thought the second one in June, we would miss the opportunity for the council to vote it out.
The last meeting is June 20th.
Too late.
That's our last meeting.
May 23rd and our meeting on June 12th.
Right, so we have 2 meetings to deal with all of these items if we are going to appropriate that free cash for this fiscal year.
Just, Madam President, through you to the chair, just because this item is before the council, if it goes back, it cannot be chartered when it comes up, right? If it's dealt with?
Question is, can it be chartered when it comes back up?
No, if an item is before the council, if it's sent back to committee and it comes back, it's been before the council once, so it can't be chartered at that time. What I'm concerned about is the end of the year timing. Not that anyone has any plans to do that. I'm just trying to understand procedurally what are the exposure that we're putting your point about the importance of getting free cash committed and and out the door, in effect, before the end of the fiscal year. Otherwise, you wait a whole nother extended cycle. So I just want to be clear that what you're indicating, as I understand it, even though it's not officially part of the motion, is that the Finance Committee will get this and the other items back out to us so that we can vote on it and make a decision one way or another, just, by the end of the time that we have. Is that correct?
I mean, that's my understanding. Of course, anything can happen
No,
in
I
committee, so
understand.
who knows?
No,
And
but it just helps to understand what to do about this item. Okay.
I don't know about the charter issue. I think Councillor Baker, you know those rules better than I, and Madam President, perhaps you too. So I'll defer to you on that one.
My understanding, because this item is actually before the council now, if it's being committed and if it comes back, it cannot be chartered. It has to be dealt with or not.
I would agree with that, Councilor
Okay.
Baker.
Thank you.
Okay, some folks online and then come back here. So Councilor Laredo?
Thank you, Madam President. So I fully agree with Councilor Gentile's idea to recommit this, or commit this rather, to finance. I was one of the folks who was abstained in our last vote. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of taking $10 million of free cash and paying down a 30-year obligation with it and not using it in other creative ways. I think we need to have a much deeper discussion about what we're doing with this level of free cash. Whether Councilor Gentile's particular theory or not is the right one, I don't know, but that's why we have committees. I think it's very important for us to have that. I want to just echo too what Councilor Gentile said. I support 100% the work on Lincoln Elliott. I also support 100% the work on Horace Mann. So it's not a question of whether we do the work, we're going to. It's simply a matter of what mechanisms we use to fund it. So I'm going to vote to recommit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kalis.
So I want to align with Councilor Gentile and Councilor Laredo. I fully support those school projects. I do think recommitting is a good idea. And that's my only comment. Now, I'm going to read a statement from Councilor Markowitz because he couldn't be here, but he wanted to make sure he got his 2 cents in. Dear colleagues, capital projects are financed by long-term debt. Operational items are paid for by current revenue and fund transfers in. The financial theory that underpins this is the idea of wanting to match expenses with the time when the benefits are realized. In the case of a capital project, the benefit is realized over a longer period of time than just a single year. Accordingly, a component of the capital item cost is provided annually. This is the debt service or annual payment, just like a mortgage that we all have. And it is provided over a period of years commensurate with the realizing the benefit annually over and over. Keeping this in mind, the $10 million should be kept for current use, not used entirely at one point in time to finance a capital item. A portion of it can be used for the debt service and another portion for other priorities. This will not jeopardize the ability to sell the total amount of bonds required for Lincoln Elliott. Lincoln Elliott will be funded, and as noted, should be funded completely by the bond. We will complete Lincoln Elliott. This approach will keep the $10 million for current needs, like restoring teaching positions and paying current year debt service. Now consider this. The $10 million could also generate the same investment return of $600,000 as has been proposed as a savings in the debt service of the $10 million. So it's really a wash from a financial standpoint. That's at a 6% rate of return, which is what we've been getting. I strongly recommend you reject the use of free cash to pay down the bond, keep it for current needs, including new debt service for Lincoln Elliott, and pay for many other things, including Horace Mann debt service, teacher positions, and roads. I apologize for the short presentation. I'm traveling and cannot be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam President. Of course, my ears really perked up when I heard about this. For everybody knows how important this project is to the Lincoln Elliott community and to Ward 1 in particular. It's not that I necessarily object between now and June for finance to take a look at it. I think it is, makes sense to take advantage of the current high rates and to leverage our funds. So I'm not so concerned about the next few weeks, but I would like more information on what kind of financial vehicle we're talking about, where this money's going, because I would be concerned about having that money available for the project when needed. I don't want it to interfere in any way in making sure this project moves ahead as planned and that it will open on time, on schedule for the Lincoln Elliott community. So not sure how I'm going to vote yet about it, but I think it's an important thing to bring up, but I am very, very wary about how it's going to work, and I need to have more information on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Danberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very interested in the idea of creating a trust fund. I think that Councillor Gentile has brought forward a very good idea here that I'd like to see explored. So I'm going to support bringing this back to finance. The economy has indeed changed, and we're in a very different interest rate market now than we were a few years ago. And if we were to just, let's say, put this $10 million into a trust fund, we're in a 6% market. That's the interest rate that we've been getting. We would get in 12 months the $600,000 that we're looking for here, and we would still have the $10 million in investment capital. So I will support recommittal to finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grossman, you've already spoken. So Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm not a finance whiz. I have to say the idea of a trust fund is interesting, but I'm very worried about the timing here in 2 meetings that we have a plan on the table that works to get the schools the money they need to pass this budget. And if they don't have this, or they're unsure, we bring it down to the wire, and they need to rethink their budget, giving them no time to do so. So the timing is not very long between now and June 20th. Makes me very nervous. I keep relating this all to mortgage payments, as many of you have. So if I want my mortgage payments to be less so that I free up more cash to live on, if I put in a bigger down payment, right? It's better to pay 20% than 5%. Your monthly payments are less. If you can do that, then you do it so that you free up that cash, which is how I see this proposal. It doesn't matter, well, it's not that it doesn't matter what that's going to be used for, that $600,000 that's freed up because they're making a bigger down payment. The schools decide how to use that $600,000, as Councillor Grossman said, they've decided to use it to reduce the size of elementary school classes. So I'm not sure. I guess I'll just put it this way: acknowledging my my ignorance on some of these matters, but I don't understand why we're doing this at this point in time. There's a plan on the table that works. Getting more money for kindergarten aides is another matter entirely, and you know, that is, we get that if we can further reduce the payment into the pension plan, or maybe we get that by, you know, cutting more of something on the city side. It's not that there exists another $600,000 a year, if that's what's needed for kindergarten aides. I'm just making that up, without making cuts somewhere else. So I guess I'm asking that question. If anybody who is contemplating bringing this back into committee, I imagine if you have only 2 meetings left, they're going to be very long, very late night meetings. And to what end? Why are we trying to come up with a different solution to what the schools want to do when they have a solution? Is it not the perfect solution? I don't know, but you know, there's that saying, why make the perfect the enemy of the good? I'm open, I'm listening, I'll read the reports. Obviously, I can't be at finance. Why is a trust fund better than this proposal we have here? Or if a trust fund's a really great idea, why don't we take our time after we pass this budget and figure out how to build a trust fund for future needs? Because next year is going to be tougher than this year without an override.
Councilor Crossley, you need more time.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I totally agree with Councilor Crossley. The timing of this has really got me concerned. I'm not concerned about Lincoln Elliott because the commitment to build that school on time is firm, but the commitment to build Horace Mann is not. And this is a plan to get Horace Mann back on track. Following our last committee of the whole meeting, I asked Ms. Lemieux if the retirement board approves the decrease in rate of the pension contributions and the council votes to approve the COLA increases, but votes no on this item, 127-23, would that stop the Horace Mann project from going forward? And she said that it would. So my concern is the Horace Mann project. So I will not vote to recommit this. I appreciate Councilor Gentile's motion to perhaps have some sort of investment fund. But again, that's unpredictable and our economy can change on a dime and we could lose that great return of interest. So I support 127-23 and I hope my colleagues do for Horace Mann. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Krinsman.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with all my colleagues that the school funding projects are some of the best things we do. Absolutely support those. As a matter of fact, I ran for school committee several years ago, essentially on a platform to fix our schools. So there's nothing more important to me than the school funding projects that we have. Spending money on our roads, our fields, and our schools is, I think, the best work that we do. If I understand it correctly, well, I shouldn't say that. I guess I want to ask, is it the case that the proposal of a trust fund or some other use could make sense at this time? Does that have to do with the fact that interest rates are high? And if so, that would make sense to me. What I will simply say, I guess I'd like to ask that question of Councilor Markowitz, but I don't know if Councilor Kalis can fully channel his spirit or if we're just stuck with the statement that he read. But I have a lot of faith in our finance committee, and especially the chair of our finance committee. So I'm going to support committing this to the finance committee, not recommitting. Thank you, everyone. Committing this to the finance committee to let them investigate that and see if a trust fund or some other mechanism makes the most sense, because I do think we still have time to do that. And I anxiously await hearing what they come up with, and I will certainly try to join those meetings if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam President. I fully intend to support bringing this to the Finance Committee for exactly the reason that Councilors Krinsman, Markowitz, Laredo, Gentile, and a few others have spoken to. this is not, voting to send this to finance is not a no vote for Lincoln Elliott. It's anything but. This is an opportunity for us to explore options that we haven't had a chance to explore yet. Taking that $10 million in cash that is, cash today, right? As we learned through the conversations we had with school committee member Chris Bresky, we have an opportunity right now to see if there are opportunities for us in the future to take that $10 million, perhaps join it with some of its other friends that we have in cash today, to maybe get to 15 or 18, $20 million worth of a total fund, so that even if interest rates do start to come down, or perhaps when they start to come down, we can still accommodate the $600,000 of payment, on an ongoing basis to fully fund NPS. I personally have more questions than answers right now, but I think this is the opportunity for us to ask those questions, not to risk or sacrifice what we're trying to get done for Lincoln Elliott. I will not support an opportunity or I will not support a vote that puts the Lincoln Elliott project at risk. That is not what this is doing. This is an opportunity to talk through some more options, see what it would take, and then bring it back to the council and see if we feel that if there is a better opportunity for us. And that's something I think is definitely our responsibility to do. I will be supporting sending this to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, I had taken my hand down because I didn't want to belabor things, but I will actually speak very briefly that I very much agree with what Councillor Oliver just said, and others, that and Councillor Kunstman, I have faith that if this goes back to finance, the full conversation can happen. And I don't think it means we're not in favor of Lincoln Elliott, and I will be voting in favor of Councillor Gentile's suggestion that we commit this to finance. Thanks.
Thank you. If you've already spoken and you don't want to speak again, if you could take your hand down, that would help a lot. Councillor Lucas is next.
Thank you, President Albright. I just want to correct the record because there was a slight mistake in the reports docket. It said that I was not voting in the committee of the whole. And in fact, I did vote verbally with a thumbs up that night. I was having computer problems. So I had emailed Ms. Moore and told her to correct the record, which it was corrected in our email that we received today from Ms. Flynn for tonight's meeting. So I did vote for it in the committee of the whole, but I'm going to vote to send this back to the finance, or send this to the finance committee, excuse me, just so that we can weigh our options as to what Councillor Gentile and Oliver had said before me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Councillor Danberg, do you have your hand up again?
Sorry, it's up from before. I'll take it down.
Okay. And Councillor Crossley, do you have your hand up again?
Nope.
No, okay. Do you have, yes, Councillor Leary.
I think Councillor Greenberg made a very important point that we certainly could be putting the Horseman Project at risk. And I'm just not convinced that this is not a risky thing to do this late in the year, to experiment with our school budget. So I won't be voting to recommit this to finance.
Councillor Gentile.
I need to ask for a minute 30, please.
Okay, Councillor Gentile would like another minute and a half. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Please go ahead.
So Lincoln Elliott is going forward regardless. The question is, I believe that we need, what, $50 million is the budget? So the question is if the administration comes forward with an actual bonding request for 40 million or 50 million, all right? As far as the type of investment, we don't get to make that decision. The mayor doesn't get to make that decision. That is solely in the hands of the treasurer, how the money's invested. I use the example of the rainy day fund because it showed that he's shown good judgment. And by putting him into the safest, one of the safest investments you can, T-bills, he's looking at a rate of return of over 5%. So the money will be safe. The other advantage is, or plus for the city that I forgot to mention, is that if we set up this trust fund and we don't if we don't give up the $10 million in cash and we start the trust fund and we build on it, and there are ways, I honestly think, to get it much higher, that will be seen as a reserve fund. And I know some of you think differently about our bond rating, but I still think it's a very good thing to keep our AAA bond rating. And if we were to talk to the people from Moody's, one of the concerns that they had was, you know, our long-term debt, but also our reserves. And so this would be seen as a substantial source of reserves, which I think is a very big plus for the city. And I apologize, I think I confused things a little bit by tying this to something in the school budget. I shouldn't have done that. I think it just confused things. The projects going forward, we're talking about bonding, and it's either going to be $40 or $50 million.
Thank you. So, Councilor Grossman, there are things that have been linked that perhaps could use some. The Horace Mann project has been linked to this Lincoln Elliott project. Could you clarify that for us?
I mean, I can clarify what I know. I did see in email Councilor Greenberg's correspondence with Ms. Lemieux, and so I'm not 100% sure exactly what that email correspondence was meant to convey. Here's the picture as it's been laid out for us. Horace Mann has been linked to the pension conversation. When the mayor first made an announcement about these different moving parts, the concept was that she asked the retirement board to consider a reduction in the growth of the city's pension appropriation from 9.6% to what ultimately became a recommendation and a vote by the retirement board of 6.6%, and that the money that would be freed up in cash as a result of that in year one would be enough money to pay for the design phase of Horace Mann, which thereafter, then when the project work is underway, would be bonded. So the tie the mayor made was between her proposed pension plan and Horace Mann. And I think it was a simultaneous announcement, but it may have been within a matter of days, that the announcement about the intent to not bond $10 million of Lincoln Elliott, but rather pay for it out of free cash, which then would free up this $600,000 this year to the school appropriation, which their intent is then for that to remain in the school appropriation. So the idea is that that $600,000 would grow at approximately 3.5% as the remainder of the school appropriation would do. So that's how those two things have been announced as linked from their perspective. Let's also just be clear that this trust idea, I mean, we can't do that on our own. So, you know, any parameters, what would it be for, how would we use it, that would have to come from the mayor's office. I mean, our leverage is we get to vote yes or no on any particular request that they give us. We obviously have had these different brainstorms that we've sort of suggested back, but I think we all know how limited procedurally are by our options. I'm hopeful we can have a meaningful conversation around it if it's committed to finance, but you know, I don't know that we would be in a position to be able to answer a very valid question like Councilor Leary asked, and to respond for a minute to Councilor Crossley's point about, you know, can't we wait? I think, unfortunately, the answer is really no, because if if some sort of a trust were to be a viable option, this is, you know, like half, less than half, but $10 million out of a concept of $25 million. If this is committed, that's gone. So, you know, I think it's an interesting conversation right now because we have these really interesting pockets of money. Councilor Gentile actually didn't add in the $5 million that Ms. Lemieux still has on her spreadsheet as emergency free cash to roll forward to following years that is unspoken for at the moment. That's $5 million more. So, you know, there are a lot of big questions here. Obviously, the plans have been really confusing. I mean, to me, I keep describing it as like a financial pretzel. That's what I feel like we're in. So perhaps that was helpful. I'm not sure.
Councilor Bowman, did you want to speak?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. All right. So, wow. Just going back with the whole MBA finance thing and rolling out all our numbers. I feel, you know, first, I think we need to keep in mind that the prepaying of the $10 million frees up money that we wouldn't have. That's where the $600,000+, it frees up money that we would not have to pay on those bonds, and that goes towards the schools. So, you know, it's not doing that means that money has to come out of the school budget to pay. If they're going to bond $50 million for the school, there's going to be a bigger payment required, and that money has to come from somewhere. And I think the administration has made that clear that that will have to come out of the school budget. I am concerned too, you know, or don't have faith that if we're not in a position to create this trust, that we're going to be successful in convincing the administration to create this trust and invest this money, especially since it isn't, you know, we might not lose principal, but certainly we can't count on having continued periods of high interest rates. And they are, you know, when it drops below 3%, we're sort of more in a less favorable position. So I'm really not supportive at this point of going forward. I'm really concerned about what will happen if we're not able to move this forward this year and it ends up getting dragged into next year. So, yeah, so that's, but I am favorable looking at the rest of free cash, but thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? Councilor Baker.
I just want to be clear. The Chair of Finance is in support of this motion now. Is that correct? I just want to be.
I'm in support of it. I can live with either result. I think, I mean, I can't do anything other than just speak honestly to you all. I am wary of what's to come and how much work we have to do. And at the same time, I think this idea, as well as lots of other ideas out there, have merit. And I really struggle with the fact that we're just put in this position to say we're out of time and you can't consider creative ideas and you can't brainstorm things. That also feels really bad to me. So, you know, I'm intending to support the motion, but I certainly respect the many points of view that have been expressed here tonight.
But as I also understand it, it's your intention to make sure that some resolution is brought back to us in a timely way. So we're not going to be, you can't control what happens in committee, obviously.
Right, to the extent I can. I mean,
No, I understand.
You know, I will try to drive us to a vote, but, you know, we have some wonderful independent thinkers and colleagues on our committee, and I can't guarantee that.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
I think, Councilor Grossman, it's worth asking, will you communicate with the mayor on this as the Finance Committee moves forward? Because if you get to June 12th, you say yes, and the mayor says no, then what? So is there a way to communicate with the mayor as you move along?
I'll communicate whatever the council would like me to communicate to the mayor. I will attempt to communicate in whatever way the council would like me to communicate with the mayor. I'm one person and I can communicate this way. You know, what response or conversation may ensue from there, either at committee or outside of committee, I don't know.
I just think it's worthwhile having a little Gantt chart about what has to be done when and by, you know, to get us to the end of the year successfully with the projects, Lincoln Elliott, Horace Mann, money for the schools.
Right.
Just-
I mean, so it's May 15th, right? Our next finance meeting is a week from Thursday. I don't know what sort of brainstorming might be available between myself, Counselor Gentile, the mayor's office between now and next Thursday. It would probably be helpful to preview the idea and come to the meeting with some pre-work done if it's possible. All I can say is that I think everybody knows the intensity of the pace of work on all of these different levels has been great. On a personal level, that will be difficult for me to do. I don't know if Counselor Gentile, if you're in a position or what your sort of coming schedule this week looks like. All I can say is I will do my best, but it is not going to be easy.
Councilor Gentile.
Just briefly, I would think that starting a discussion with Ms. Lemieux would be the logical starting point prior to our meeting a week from Thursday to just see what the administration is thinking. We can certainly do that.
Okay, and I think that would be helpful. Councilor Crossley, you have your hand up again, is that right?
Yes, I do. I'm sure you'll be doing this. I need to crystallize this for my own frame of mind. We got a one-page letter from the public schools today, very clearly outlining how these pieces fit together with the proposal that's before us. We don't get to vote on all the pieces, but this is the proposal that's before us. Especially since I can't be at finance, I hope you're always asking, you know, why is some other idea better than this idea? The timing has already been stressed. Glad if you're going to meet with Maureen Lemieux in the meantime, but always be asking why is a different idea better than this idea? And if the administration doesn't want to play at this point, they've put a whole lot of work into this, and this is the idea they came up with. It will work to free up the cash that's needed to balance the school budget this year, and that money will go to the schools every year following because of the way it's laid out. So why is another idea better at rushing it through in the next couple of meetings? I understand, folks. I hear the sense of the room is to send it to committee, not recommit it, but send it to committee. It never was at the finance committee. So I think that's the motion we're voting on. But why is it better? So that's it. Thank you.
Councilor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I just want to reiterate my fear that this will further delay the Horace Mann project. And I want to be on record to say that I do not support this. I want the Horace Mann project to move forward. That those families have been waiting for years for this. They deserve this. And I'm afraid that this is just going to prolong the process, even delay the process. So I hope it doesn't move forward. Thank you.
Okay, I think everyone has spoken that wants to speak. So we'll call the roll on this motion, which is to commit this item to the Finance Committee for further discussion.
Councilor Baker?
Aye.
Councilor Bowman?
No.
Councilor Crossley?
No.
Councilor Danberg?
Aye.
Councilor Downs?
No.
Councilor Gentile?
Aye.
Councilor Greenberg?
No.
Councilor Grossman?
Aye.
Councilor Humphrey?
No.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Kritzman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
No.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz, Counselor Noel,
Aye.
Counselor Norton,
No.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Ryan,
No.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
and President Albright.
Aye.
The vote passes 15-8.
Okay. Council Lucas, do you have a motion for us?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. That concludes our work.